My most prayerful pranams at Bhagavan's divine lotus feet. Respected elders, dear sisters, dear brothers, Sai Ram to all of you. A very happy Ladies' Day. And my husband said, every day is Ladies' Day. What's new? Well, jokes apart, Swami has said that amongst the myriad forms that has taken life in this universe, being born as a human being is a huge and a great blessing. But then he goes on further to say, being born as a woman is a great privilege. So, what is special about Ladies' Day? Again, I will quote our Bhagavan. He says, wherever a woman is honored, wherever a woman is revered, there divinity is present in its full potency. So, we have our Lord amidst us today and every day. Our scriptures ascribes 7 virtues to the class of women. What are these virtues? They are Satya, that is truth, Dharma, righteousness, Shanti, peace, Prema, love, Ananda, bliss, Sahana, fortitude, tolerance, and Swanubhuti, spirituality. And our scriptures and history has given us innumerable role models that we can refer back to, who have lived these virtues. And Swami himself has narrated so many instances of great women in our epics, like Mother Kaushalya, Mother Sita, Mahatma Gandhi's mother, who played a great role in shaping his life, Putlibai, Emperor Shivaji's mother, Jijabai. Swami has quoted and referred to Queen Victoria. He's also mentioned so many other great women. We can all go back and read and remind ourselves of the qualities that these great women lived and practiced. Swami's own mother, Mother Ishwarama, again, is a noble person who showed us how we should be kind, compassionate, and she lived for others. But today I'm not here to talk about all these great people. And Swami has had numerous women devotees who are very well known. And we can hear about them, read about them. But today I'd really like to share about those great women who are less well known, who have inspired me. I have been very privileged to have been raised in a family that was already in Bhagavan's fold. I've had the pleasure and the privilege of meeting, interacting, and being molded by a number of people, women, throughout my life. And I want to just talk about a few of them, if I can today. There are 2 ladies that I would like to start with, who, whilst I was growing up in Bangalore, in Swami's ashram in Whitefield, Brindavan, there were 2 very dedicated ladies. One was Dr. Savitri. Now, Dr. Savitri was the person who worked in Swami's hospital, General Hospital in Whitefield. Her whole life was working and serving her patients, and through that, serving the Lord himself. Dr. Savitri, for 28 years, did night duty every day. 28 years as a doctor. The only time she would come back to her room was to have a shower and then go back out, have breakfast, and go back out, back to the hospital. And the only time she had off from her night and day duty was when she would go to Prashanthi Nilayam for Swami's birthday or one such occasion. It was very, very rare, 2 or 3 times, and that would be just for the day. The dedication, the devotion, and her duty towards the people that she served in that hospital was something that even today is beyond, somebody who could do that for 28 years. And Swami has referred to her in his discourses as well and praised her for her dedication. And that can happen only with complete faith and surrender to our Bhagavan. Dolly was another lady, a nurse by profession, who was a nurse in the United States. And she had heard of Swami, came to Bangalore from the US, and straight away wanted to serve in his hospital. Now, again, goes back a few decades. Dolly joined Swami's hospital as a nurse. And again, she was somebody who served for decades without having a day away from her work. Now, Dolly, as I was growing up, always referred to Swami as Mummy. That was how endearing her relationship was with Swami. And we were all of the view or the belief that Dolly had nobody, no family. And it was just her, and she had dedicated her life to service and to Swami. Dolly, despite many challenges with her health, she had all kinds of issues, but that did not stop her from going to work. She got breast cancer not so long ago, a few years ago, and had to undergo a double mastectomy. But despite that, she continued to work. And when this happened, suddenly Dolly's mother, sister, all come. Now, somebody here we've all thought who did not have anybody had in fact had a mother, had family, but her life was completely dedicated. She had detached herself from the world to serve and be with the Lord forever and ever. And Dolly, despite her health challenges, carried on working as much as she could. She would go to work every single day to the hospital. And she only recently passed away. And Dolly's trait was not just about service. She was a devout Devi Upasaka. That means she worshipped the mother goddess, and with such sincerity. And these are things and simple people that throughout our lives have touched us and have touched me. And again, Swami has referred to Dolly in his talks, saying how she served him and served the patients, and therefore served him, and how pleased he was with that service and that dedication. Now, I want to go on to another person. Now, this auntie, Taru auntie as I know her as, is also the mother of one of Swami's professors in Swami's Institute, Brother Ruchir Desai, late Brother Ruchir Desai. Now, Taru auntie, again, is in her 90s, was in her 90s. And we had the the great good fortune of interacting and knowing her and spending time with her. And one of the things that she told us, both Mahesh and me, was she was one of the first batch of Balvikas gurus from Bombay. And at that time, when Balvikas had started, Swami had personal interactions with the gurus in the early 60s, in the late 60s and 70s. And she was one of those who had that great blessing. And so we said, Mahesh asked, Auntie, what did Swami say to you as, as a Balvikas guru? And she said, Swami said to all the gurus, just treat every child as your own child. The children that come to Balvikas, treat them as if they are your own children. And she did that throughout. And she did that even as time went on. Sadly, Brother Ruchir Desai, who was the associate professor in Swami's college in Brindavan, succumbed to COVID in 2021. He was only in his late 50s. And much, for an elderly parent, he was the only child to her. And of course, as you know, during COVID, arrangements for funerals, etc., were very restricted and very restrictive. And whilst she was a resident in Swami's ashram in Puttaparthi, she was a permanent resident in Prashant Nilayam, and he was in Bangalore, where he passed away. She was asked, would you like to be taken to Bangalore for the last rites? And Auntie's response was, I gave him to Swami many years ago. What will I do going there? This surrender, that faith. Again, these are ordinary devotees. We don't know much about them, but there's so much to learn and be inspired. Auntie, in fact, just earlier this year, again, a very, very positive person. We used to call her every week, at least twice a week, and for the last sort of 3 years. And despite this great loss of her son, her positive outlook to life. So every time we phoned, it was as if she was cheering us up. She would make us smile and laugh. And she would take great care in finding out about how we were. What did we cook today? Small things that mattered. Here is somebody who's taking an interest. And that's what she was, an embodiment of love. She recently passed away, and she had a very noble end to her life. Living a noble life, she, I believe, finished chanting the Hanuman Chalisa, finished the last line, and just dropped off. And that was her exit from the world. Somebody who lived, breathed God, but in her own private, quiet way, whilst she fulfilled her worldly duties. Now, another person that I would like to share a story about. So this is a person called Mrs. Ambika Nagarajan. We called her as Ambika Auntie. Ambika Auntie had the privilege of seeing Swami. She's now in her 70s, maybe 80s. She's in her 80s. So Ambika Auntie had the privilege of seeing Swami as a child. So when Swami used to visit Madras in the 50s, she was a little girl, and her father was an Inspector General of Police, and so he would come to see Swami and have his darshan, and she would come along as a family. And at that time, as a little girl, they used to live as a family in Mayavaram, which is further down south of India. And as a little girl, she had this yearning, and she asked it straight away to Swami. Swami, I want you to come to my house in Mayavaram. Swami is in Chennai. And Swami very lovingly and sweetly obliged and said, yes, I will come. Now that wasn't enough for Ambika auntie. She said, but when, Swami? When are you going to come? And so Swami said, next year when I come to Chennai, I will come. Of course, she goes back to her hometown and lets her family members know. And they are like, yeah, right. Swami is going to come. Just because you asked, Swami is going to come. And they were quite skeptical. And she actually had, taken a promise also from Swami that he will visit. And Swami keeps his promises. So next year, when Swami came to Chennai, to Madras, he did tell her father, look, Ambika told me that I should come to your house, so make arrangements. So for 3 days, Swami went to Mayavaram and spent 3 days in their house. Now, fast forwarding, the same auntie, grew up, got married, and for 28 years could not go to Puttaparthi or see Swami. For 28 years. However, 28 years later, she arrives in Puttaparthi and has the good fortune, Swami speaks to her, and in fact tells her, Ambika, you have come after 28 years. Now, Ambika auntie's devotion is what I wanted to highlight here. She had this great forthrightness. She was very straightforward in her devotion, straightforward. And so she was sitting in the darshan line, and of course by then Swami had, spoken to her family through interviews, etc. And so she was in one of the visits seated in the darshan line, and Swami, by then, a couple of years have gone where she's had the physical proximity to Swami, and every time Swami has paid attention to her, her family spoken. So this time, Swami goes past in the darshan line, and he looks behind her, he looks at the person next to her, he looks at the person, the other side, but does not look at auntie. Now, of course, if it were me, I would have just kind of wormed my way even further back or down and sunk, But auntie was not like that. Ambika auntie was very forthright, as I said, and she pipes up and she says, Swami, idu pudikala enakku. I don't like this. And then he mischievously turns around and he said, I was only testing, Amma. That didn't stop her. She says in Tamil, Na test kete na Swami. Did I ask for a test? And then Swami goes on to say, see, in order to go from first grade, first standard to second standard, you have to write first grade to second grade. You have to write an exam. You have to write a test, isn't it? She says, did I ask to go to the second grade, Swami? I am happy where I am. And then Swami tried again and he said, see, gold, in order to make it into a beautiful chain, you have to put it in the fire, you have to beat it, you have to twist it, you have to do all of those things and pull it out, and then it will become, and in order to make a beautiful chain. And she said, Swami, did I ask for the chain? Did I ask for the gold? I only want the goldsmith. Look at that. Again, Swami then, of course, was so happy. There were, I think she had come with a group of people, because by then people knew if you go with Ambika, you will get an interview for sure. So there were lots of people who had joined her, and come from Chennai. So Swami went on saying, you want gold chain or you want goldsmith? And everybody goldsmith, goldsmith, goldsmith. But that is that pure love and pure devotion of this simple housewife called Mrs. Ambika Nagaraj. And I've had this privilege of knowing her in those 28 years that she wasn't able to go to Puttaparthi. Another person I'd like to talk about is somebody we all know and we all love very much. You may know her as Karune Sakka. I know her as Amma. All the children may know her as Karune Santi. Now, this was one of the Sai Mahimas, I think Sai Mahima 5. With Sai Mahima, Swami called the entire group into the Mandir after the program, after the performance, into the Mandir. And Swami spoke to the group, and at the end, he gave the Vibhuti baskets, one to the gents side, somebody on the gents side, and one on the ladies side, and he gave it to Karune Santi. And he said, distribute the Vibhuti, which she dutifully did to the entire group amongst the ladies side. And then she went back and she handed the basket back to Swami. And Swami said, you also take. Now, auntie is nobody's. It's not going to give in that easily. She said, Swami, you give. She knew better. And she knows that whatever Swami gives is for our best. He gives only the best. And that was the best thing she could ask. And of course, Swami dived deep into the basket and gave her those Vibhuti packets. That presence of mind to be able to make that right decision doesn't come without the sadhana that goes with it. To be able to ask the right things to God also requires practice. And that is something that is very inspirational. And that is inspirational to me, and I'm sure to each one of us as well. I've got, in fact, we've got a little group in Eastbourne. We meet every Thursday for bhajans. It's a small group. We've got a mixture of in our group of English devotees, Indian devotees. So it's a wide mix, but it's a very small group. And one of our devotees, Mary, who's 93. Mary has been a devotee of Bhagavan for over, I think, 3 decades. But Mary has never physically been to see Swami, to India. She has never been. But she has also never missed a single meeting that we have on a Thursday. And the extraordinary thing about Mary is, and we've always been very conscious that we must not impose any particular Hindu practices, because we are a multicultural group. But when Mary heard that Swami had said chanting the Rudram is beneficial for world peace, Mary initiated this in our group. And she said, if it pleases Sai Baba, then we must do it. So the entire group, including Mary, we learnt the Rudram. Mary has learnt it, chants it beautifully. She has written it in a way that she can understand it and read it, but is able to chant it in its entirety. again, another inspirational devotee who has never physically seen Swami, but who feels Swami every day in her life. I'll just wrap up with a couple of experiences of my family members. I want to talk about my two grandmothers. They have been, both my maternal grandmother and my paternal grandmother, have been great role models and influences in molding me and the rest of our family. Both of them are quite different in that my paternal grandmother had the good fortune of seeing Swami very early on, in the 50s itself. But as a family, we came to Swami in the 60s. But she had this incredible relationship of treating Swami as her child. So it was this maternal, this sense of vatsalyam, that is the, this maternal feeling. And we've had the good fortune that Swami, when I was young and growing up, we had the good fortune of Swami visiting our family home many times, both in Madras as well as in Bangalore. And so my grandmother would have the opportunity, along with the other ladies of the house, to cook for Swami. And that was one of the things that she would do beautifully. And almost every time she would have the opportunity, she would say to Swami, "Swami, what can I cook for you today? What can I get for you? What can I cook?" And Swami, like a child, would also respond and say, "Oh, you make this really well." She used to make kurma very well. My grandmother used to make rasam very well. So he will say, "You make this kurma very well, send that," or rasam. And that was the relationship she had. She was very, again, able to be free. And that was that pure love that she showed. And Swami responded. And in her later life, they lived in Prashant Nilayam. Both my sets of grandparents resided in Prashant Nilayam towards the latter part of their lives. And this grandmother, whilst she was quite disabled with quite severe arthritis, that did not stop her from wanting to do something for somebody. So her only seva she could think of was in relation to her cooking. So what she would do was, lots of people that they knew who were living on their own, who did not have anybody, would either be coming home to the apartment, to the flat in South Prashanti for breakfast. So she will be cooking breakfast and feeding them. There will be some elderly people who lived on their own in the ashram that did not have anybody, who needed some nutritious food, and again she would be sending tiffin boxes. So every day of her life, we saw her just giving her time, cooking and feeding those that did not have somebody to do it for them, or the help. And when I think Mahesh, my husband, asked her, "But Aji, how do you do this?" She says, "This is the only seva I can do. I can't do anything else." So here again was somebody that just showed me, grab any opportunity, anything is as an offering to Swami becomes seva. And she did it not just, while she was cooking and chopping, and it was singing God's name. She sang very well. She sang kirtanas, she sang bhajans, and she used to do that all the time. So prayer and service. My other grandmother was Mrs. Leela Sundar Rao. My other paternal grandmother was Padma Damodar. My maternal grandmother was a very private person, quite the opposite. And everything was she held it within her. Nothing was a show. Her prayer was a very private thing. And whilst she had the physical access to talk to Swami, she never did. Her way of communicating to Swami was writing letters and not giving it to him, because she could. She could have done it. She will write letters, anything that was on her mind and she wanted to say to Swami, she would write her letter and just leave it behind his picture in the shrine room. And sure enough, Swami would answer whatever was in that prayer in that letter. And in one of those times, my uncle, that is her youngest son, when he was sent abroad to America to study, in all good faith he was sent. This was in the 70s. He was a very intelligent man, but somehow, whatever happened, he vanished. Nobody could track him. There was no contact. Of course, those were the days where there were no, phones or internet, 70s. And nobody knew where he was. Nobody had any idea. So you can imagine the pain that my grandmother was experiencing. 7 years, there was no contact. And the only thing she did was, again, write this letter and place it at Swami's feet in her shrine room. And sure enough, Swami answered it. But this time he answered it physically to her. And he said, "Your son will come back. Don't worry." Nobody had any idea where he was. And lo and behold, soon after that, he landed back. He turned up in Bangalore at their door. Again, Swami responds to each of our calling, whichever way we do it. But all he wants is that yearning and that intensity of yearning and that love. I'd like to finish off with my two mothers, my mother and my mother-in-law, who have been great sources of inspiration. My mother-in-law, in one interview that Mahesh, me and my mother-in-law were there in Prashant Nilayam that Swami gave us, Swami very lovingly looked at her and he said, "You have a lot of pain, isn't it, Amma? You've got severe pain." She had arthritis, severe knee pain, haven't you? And she turned around, her instant response was, "Swami, at this age, I'm able to walk. That is your grace. That is enough." And I remember she said when Swami performed our wedding in 89, and the day before our wedding in Brindavan, Swami had called the families into Trai. And he looked at my mother-in-law and he said, but Mahesh was going to come abroad. And he said, "But what will you do because all her children were away and Mahesh was the youngest. When he goes, who will look after you?" And her instant response to Swami was, "But you're there, Swami." And both these occasions, you should have seen the beaming face of Bhagavan to those responses. Again, complete surrender is what I learnt from somebody who otherwise continued to perform her worldly duties in the best way she could. But this silent strength of faith and surrender is something that she demonstrated in those responses to me. And finally, my mother. My mother, again, was not somebody who was very open in her prayer, or the only thing that she would do was on a Friday was worship, again, Devi. mother goddess. And it wasn't like, elaborate. We had a figurine of the goddess, and she would do abhishekam to it and then decorate it with garlands and all of that. And in those days, we also had the good fortune of Swami visiting our home in Bangalore. And often our home was actually quite well situated, because Swami would visit many devotees in the city and in their homes. We were en route. We were in Ulsur, by the Ulsur Lake, and so it was en route back to Whitefield. And again, this was a very small thing that my mother did very quietly on a Friday, but she never missed her Friday puja. And on one such Friday, Swami drives in. It was not a planned visit at all. We had planned visits where Swami was invited and he would come. But we also had visits where it was a surprise visit, that Swami would just dart in Swami's car and they would drive in, and Swami would come just to visit for 5-10 minutes and go. And it was one such occasion where Swami's car drives in. We are not really prepared to welcome Swami. It is just a regular Friday, a regular weekday, as they say. And Swami comes in, Swami's car comes in, he has whoever he has brought with him. And my mother rushes out. I was also there. I was a school going child at that time. My brother was also there. And we see Swami's car come, pull up at the porch. And so we rush out. My mother rushes out. And the first thing that Swami says when he opens the door and gets down, "Friday, isn't it today? See, I have come." And graciously, Swami comes in to the house, goes to our puja room. The arati that was to be done for Devi and the garland that was to have been put on Devi, Swami accepted the garland himself. We were able to offer it to Swami and do the arati for Swami. He was there literally for that 5-10 minutes. There was nothing to give Swami in terms of to offer, food, anything at all. But he just came, and that was, as soon as he got down, he said, "It's Friday, isn't it? See, I have come." It might have been my mother's yearning that Swami should come. But she never had expressed that. But he listens. So, my dear sisters and brothers, we don't have to look far, look in history, look in our epics. We are surrounded by inspirational women in our everyday, within our families, our mothers. Swami says, message for Ladies' Day, today's thought for the day. If you love your mother and serve your mother, that is like loving and serving the Lord himself. So let us salute and honor and revere all the women that are part of our lives, in our homes, in our communities, friends, families, and the world over. Everyone has that divine spark. Let us recognize and salute that divine spark within each and every one of us. So once again, a happy Ladies' Day and Sai Ram.